The 35-year reversion. Let me explain what that is. The 1976 copyright law, which came into effect January 1st, 1978, provided that the author pursuant to an assignment of their copyright, could recapture that copyright 35 years later. So 35 years from 1978 is 2013 coming up. Now, there's no definition of author. Okay. And there are 9 categories in the Copyright Act in which this can occur. One of them, 9 categories, I'm sorry, that cannot occur, and those are called work for hire. So if I have been engaged by a company under a work for hire arrangement, I cannot get recapture because it's not an assignment of copyright. The copyright is owned from the beginning by the employer. There are 2 categories, 2 essential categories, and then we divide the second category by 9. First category is I'm an employee. By that I mean a definite, a real employee. They take out taxes. I have workman's comp. The full definition if you're working for a company. Anything. Then if I sign a document that says anything I create while I'm your employee is a work made for hire. That's a valid work made for hire, and you cannot recapture that. The second category, which is more elusive, is where I have assigned my copyright to somebody pursuant to an agreement, and if it's one of 9 categories, then it can be a work for hire. Example, audio-visual work, a motion picture as an example. Motion picture is a work made for hire. When a motion picture company employs somebody, the musicians, the actors, the director, the writer, the singers, or whoever else may be employed by they are signed to a work made for hire, which means no individual who worked on that motion picture can recapture it 35 years later or at any time unless there's a contractual reason. There are 9 categories. Audiovisual is one of them. Compilations is another. Contributions to collective works is another. Tests are another. Answers to tests another. But there's no category called sound recordings. So it is the position of many of us, myself included, that the sound recording is subject to being recaptured because it is not defined as one of the 9 categories that can be assigned as a work made for hire, and therefore the author has a right to recapture that 35 years later. Now we get into the real issue. Who's the author? Is it the featured artist? Is it the feature artist and the producer? Is it the feature artist, the producer, and the engineer? Who is the author? We don't know who the author is, and what I believe is going to happen is we're going to get a substantial litigation at some point in the relatively near future in the definition of who is an author. Now, I think the record companies are going to try and claim that they're an author, but they certainly can't claim it by reason of the fact that it's a work made for hire because it's not one of the 9 categories. And the artists who work for record companies in doing a recording contract, that is not an employer situation. So it'll be an interesting battle. My belief is that ultimately the featured artist and possibly the producer along with the feature may be the authors entitled to recapture. But you and I are also aware of many records that are done by producers without artists, or virtually without artists. That artists are brought in as another instrument and put on that record. So maybe the author is only the producer in that particular instance. I don't know, but litigation on this is going to be very interesting over the next several years. According to several cases, the fact that it's in the contract, first of all, in order to be a work for hire, it must state it's work for hire in writing, but it also must be in one of the 9 categories. And even though it says it's a work made for hire, but it's not one of the 9 categories, they can't claim it. As an example, if you're a songwriter and you sign to a publisher, and even though the contract says it's a work made for hire, it's not a work made for hire because that's not that kind of contract is not one of the 9 categories.
Is that just bad legal work?
Is that bad legal work? Or is that what the intent was? I think that was the intent of the Congress at the time, because there was a lot of hearings on that. So I don't think it was bad legal. I think the only part of the bad legal work is that there's no definition of author, and why that's not there, I don't know. But there is no definition. At some point, that's going to have to be defined. An artist's work can't be a work made for hire unless it's one of the 9 categories. And that would be an audiovisual work. Now, the reason for that, and there's very good reasons for that, if I make a motion picture, I'm contracting with directors, writers, producers, actors, composers, producers. Can you imagine the chaos if 35 years after a movie was made, you have 500 people claiming that they're an author of this thing? It would be absolute beyond chaos. So there was very good reasons to do that for audiovisual works. But for recording, no, I don't think there are good reasons. They attempted to do it. In fact, I was on the opposite side of that battle. From then, the RIAA came in somewhere around 1998, I believe it was, and attempted to add a 10th category, sound recordings. And I, along with a number of people, rose up and said, no, went to Congress. And ultimately, what the short story is, we negotiated with the RIAA a repeal of that addition. So that's not there now. So the law is as it was. And sound recordings is not listed as a work made for hire, which means the author of the sound recording still has a claim 35 years later.